Welcome to Mixing Up Midlife, the weekly podcast for women in their 50s and beyond who want to explore this incredible age by being more adventurous and more curious. I'm Terri.
And I'm Melissa. And on this week's episode, we are so excited to have our guest, Mary Jo Cranmore. MJ, as she said we could call her, is a intuitive tarot reader and astrologer. MJ, I am going to actually pass this on to you because I could read your bio, but I think it would be more authentic coming from you explaining what you are and how you were called to do this, because this was not your original career from what I understand.
No, thank you. Nice to see you guys. And no, this is a career that started for me in earnest in about 2017. However, I had been learning astrology and learning to read tarot since 1997. I've been a television news producer. That's my original career. I worked for NBC and ABC all over the country. Then I moved on from that career into marketing and media, PR, things along those lines. The arc of the career is always a communicator. And so in 2016, 2017, I just had this really strong urge to pivot. And the story about that started really in 2008 with kind of a spiritual awakening that I had no idea which most people who have spiritual awakenings have no idea what it is when it happens. And I woke up after a marriage ended. I lost a job. Everything collapsed at one point in 2008. And you might remember 2008 when everything fell off a cliff. So I was not alone in that, but I moved, got a divorce, sold my house, everything just collapsed. And I woke up in my new little place and I heard a full sentence that said, "It's never too late for a man to connect to his feelings." And I was like, who's talking to me? Who's that? It was a man's voice. I've only heard it once or twice since, in fact. And there have been so many layers of what that means since 2008. I was relating that to a relationship, and then I related that to man in terms of human.
Wow.
And never too late for human to connect to their feelings. And then that's what real intuition is you're connecting to your feelings. And so when I started to bring these streams together, I was pitching clients, doctors, lawyers, accountants, all different kinds of people to media to be guests on television. Some pretty high level folks, lawyers, people who work at departments in the government. And I just could not do it one more day. And I finally just had to say, this is it for me. And it was a terrifying thing because that was my career and I didn't really know what the next step was. But I finally just said, okay, that's it. I'm not doing this anymore. So you're going to have to talk some more because I'm done trying to go, is this it? Is this the right thing? Is this it? I'm really done doing that. And so I had some financial situations, getting out of a business, all this kind of stuff happened. And I found myself in the office of an attorney who was recommended to me, this woman, Kara. And I said it out loud. I said, I want to quit this life. And she said, okay, I'm going to take all this here and you rearrange your stuff. I'll be acting like Wonder Woman. I'll fend off any kind of calls from anybody. And you try to get your head straight about the next thing. And she said, I recommend going on a meditation retreat. I recommend doing something else. And I literally felt like the weight of the world was just lifted off me. She didn't yell at me. She didn't tell me I was foolish for doing so.
This is your attorney?
Yes.
Wow. That's
right.
We have to spread her name around.
Exactly. She's in Western Massachusetts. And I was just so, I don't know, I felt cared for and nurtured by that. And I felt given permission as a grown-up person to make a decision. It wasn't impacting anyone else. I was single. I had no children. It wasn't impacting anyone else but me. Mm-hmm. But there were a whole kind of raft of different people in my life who would have done something different than that. So I left that building and it was like July and it was just like a peak moment where I went out into this parking lot, like in the back of a lawyer's office. It was not a pretty place, but like the sky was the bluest I've ever seen. And I just could smell every single smell there was. And I was like, this is an important moment to remember because you just left one life and you're walking into something new. And it lasted for a couple of months where not in that kind of concentration, but like it lasted long enough for me to allow myself to do something that I was afraid how other people what would they say to me? And I was just alone in my little house that I had my kitty cat and I hadn't had Charlie yet, but I had my kitty cats. And I was like, okay, so what's fun? So what would be fun? Because like she was protecting the financial aspect of me long enough to get me, it was like maybe to the end of the year. I had some projects that I was still doing. There was money coming in from things that I was like unwinding from. But at the end of the year, that was it. So there was going to have to be something else. And so I started the channel. I started Soulful Revolution because I had been reading tarot my whole life. Every time I read for somebody, they were like, wow, that was amazing. And one of the final projects, I was shooting a video for a couple of clients down in Dallas and totally drained by it, exhausted by it. I loved those clients, but I just couldn't do that anymore. And I came to the airport and someone sent me an email. It was an article from the New York Times about how tarot was really big on YouTube.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about, but I read the article and I was like, what? Like, how does that even work? And because my only experience was one-to-one. And so I spent time, I was like, all right, I got 2 hours in the airport. So I'm just going to zoom around YouTube and see what I see. And I found a couple people and I watched them and I spent some money on their channel. I joined some memberships. I did some stuff. And I got home and I was like, let's just see. Let's just see. Oh, what do you get to lose? Just make some video. You got all this stuff. You don't have to buy anything. So just make some video.
What year was this?
This was 2017. And I had originally started with a partner.
Oh.
And I was doing readings with her. And I watched the video of it and I was like, oh, no way. Like she kept squashing me every single time I said something.
Not the
Nope.
right energy.
I just said, that's not for me. So I did some video and I just was like, let's see. And I just posted it. They're still there. They're still all on YouTube. Every single video I've ever done is still there. And people started liking it and started watching it. And that was like a September. And by November, the channel was making money.
Wow.
Or October, the channel was making, I like $245. I made like $245. But like the next month, it was like exponentially bigger and exponentially bigger.
Wow.
And so I figured out like the basic structure of it. And I already had the meditation and the spiritual piece of it was very much ingrained in my life. So that really wasn't where the learning was. The learning was how to translate this into something that other people could watch. I wasn't even really thinking of it as a business when I was first doing it, but I was thinking like, how do I want to spend my days?
That's amazing.
And
That's amazing that this just rolled into.
Absolutely. And
finding your purpose.
Right. So the end of that story is, so by the time I got back in December after Thanksgiving or whatever to Kara, who said to me, we'll file after the first of the year, but come back. She was like, let's file bankruptcy. Let's just clear the decks here. And I was like, okay, fine. So I came back to her and she had all the paperwork. I'm like, I don't think we're going to have to do this.
Oh my gosh.
And she was like, what are you talking about? And I showed her like the financials and I showed her my business plan. I showed her what I was doing and I showed her, I was like, yeah, that's all the stuff that I know I'm supposed to have, but here's the fun part. This is what I'm doing. I'm enjoying it. And people are all of a sudden, you have like 5,000 subscribers. Like, where did that come from? I'm like, I don't know. They just found me and they started watching. So she was like, I can't believe it. So we paid off every single debt I had within 6 months.
Wow.
That's insane and amazing. Wow.
Right. That was so empowering to me because I had incurred that with business loans and other stuff. And I really wanted to stand up for that. This is my shift into something new. And that's the closing out of the old. And I remember, so the following year, like we closed all that out, everything changed, the whole life changed, everything changed. I had friends calling me from college. They're like, I'm sorry, I just saw you on YouTube and I don't understand what's going on. And then other friends are like calling me in the morning. They're like, you got 5,000 more subscribers, right? I'm like, yeah, I noticed.
And I just want to say at this point, you're just under 300,000 subscribers.
Yeah, we're closing in on 300,000.
Yeah,
and
insane.
yeah, so since 2017 or something like that.
But the whole tarot of it, the awakening, I want to talk about that, if that's okay. You heard this voice, a male voice saying,
It's never too late for a man to connect to his feelings.
And that happened a couple of times since.
2017. So I received other kinds of messages like that, which is like out loud in the room. Most intuition is coming from an inner knowing for me, but I am clairaudient, and it's how I got through college. I didn't even realize that I could, there's some kind of like I'm getting, downloads. I can hear sentences and words and things like that. I don't really have a visual sense, which is weird since I'm a filmmaker and everything, but it's more the auditory part of it. But like in college, if I went to class, I could hear the professor and I read the question and I could play what he was saying in my head.
Wow. That would be very useful.
I know,
It
that
was
would be
very
nice.
useful. And I was like, I didn't know that not everybody could do that.
You said you were always into tarot. So obviously the spiritual side, universe, whatever you want to call it, you've always been connected to it.
Yes, I'm an adopted kid. There's that thing about being in a family. Like I felt very delivered to this group of people. My parents were older. They're both gone now. I have one brother who is quite ill right now. And I was delivered to this group of people for a purpose. I always knew that. Generally, it was communication. That's the string through the family. But I remember talking or listening or hearing my grandmother when I was little, when I was under 3, she passed away. And my mother was like, stop talking to my mother. What are you hearing? And I was just, it stopped when I was like 6 or 7, which it generally does. Most small children have some kind of memory of, or if they are really in this kind of vein of information, you might hear people saying, they were talking about something that I didn't understand that wasn't really part of their life. And why were they saying this? Maybe it was a dream. Maybe it was something else. But I was definitely one of those little kids who was very fanciful, very fairy dust and unicorns, very, talking all the time. And just also with animals. I was very close with animals. I was always feeling protected by animals and everything like that. It was one of those things that I understood. And then it kind of gets squashed out of you in certain ways.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in different types of environments or with different types of people that are not in that energetic experience. And so I'm just going to speak for myself. I do protect that in those environments. So putting myself on YouTube was kind of like you're putting yourself out there, but at the same time, it's very protected to me. It feels quite protected to me.
So let me ask you about what you do on YouTube. You'll do a tarot pull or reading. I think they're at least 15 minutes long. A lot of times, I think longer. So it's a lot of content. What do you do prior to that to prepare? And you're speaking to who knows who at that point.
You're channeling. I'm channeling is what's happening.
And when you are saying all this, who are you actually speaking to? Whoever is listening and will take something from it? Or is it particularly someone who knows their astrology and who they are?
So there's a lot to this.
As I said, I think I told you before we started that I'm the dummy version of this.
So you're talking about how I'm interacting with the folks that show up and watch, which is something that is actually real. When people show up and watch these readings, even though I have recorded them even a day or 2 days before, or I could be live, it almost doesn't matter. It's like I'm connecting with the energies of the folks who are having this type of question, who are in this kind of energy, who are dealing with certain types of situations. The way we've organized it is people know that they're a Sagittarius or people know they're Aquarius. So it's just a way, and also the SEO gods on YouTube prefer that so that they can organize the content too. So it's coming from 2 different directions. People are searching that way. This is one of the things I have learned. It is amazing to me that there really are pods of Geminis out there who are having the same experience. That is freaking me out because I'm like, Shakespeare was right. There's only 7 stories in the whole world.
Wow.
Like, damn, how did he know that? Because it's like man against nature, man against man, like those kinds of storylines that Shakespeare was talking about. And I was a literature student too. So I heard it from that end. And then I'm like, damn.
It's correct.
So when I'm preparing for the reading, you're talking about that.
Yeah.
When I'm preparing, it's sort of not even a process anymore. I'm like, okay, this morning I'm going to do the Sagittarius reading for December. I have a little routine in the morning. I usually wake up about 5 or 5:30. I do not get out of bed until 8. So don't get me wrong. But
Melissa gets up at 4:45 and gets out of bed at 5:15 and then goes running.
My head would be spinning if I was lying in bed that long. But you're
Oh,
using this
no.
constructively.
This is absolutely so. I'll let Charlie out and we'll hang in bed, and I have a little fireplace in there. And so I do my meditation.
Mhm.
I pay attention to what's going on. Okay, today is Sagittarius and Capricorn and Aquarius. I also do a morning message every day, which can be for anybody. It's like folks key in on the title of that video. And I'm just like, what do they need to know right now? What's important for them to know right now? When you start like interfacing it with astrology, you have such a broader constellation of the energy that you are. Because as a Sagittarius, I'm a December 9th Sagittarius. So as a Sag, that's the moment in time, like that's the sun sign of you when you show up on the planet. But you have a moon sign, which is your feelings and things that other people might not see. And that's another part of you, right? There's a rising sign, which is the exact moment in time you landed on this planet. So it's connected to past lives and future plans. It's the mask that other people. So if you went to lunch with somebody, spent an hour with somebody, and then after that, your friend said, well, what do you think of her? And you're like, I think she's a bit of a diva. That's the ascendant sign. It's like the thing that people see immediately about you. They may not know deeply enough to know your sun sign or your moon sign or how you're really feeling about it. It's your public persona.
That's a great way to explain it.
It's what people see of you. And then there's your Venus sign, like how you like to be nurtured and how you love, how you nurture people. So when you know that and you're doing, so I did the Aquarius reading and I'm a Venus in Aquarius. And so I can see little glimmers of my own story in that. And I can see little glimmers of my story in my Gemini moon. So I can see that. Astrology is just a way of telling time. It's before we started telling time by our clocks and by our job. Astrology is the moment in time.
I wanted to ask you about manifesting and purpose. These are going to be probably two separate things.
Yeah.
But the purpose question is for women who are our age and who, as we entered this stage, a lot of us have new beginnings. People have been widowed, divorced, empty nesters. So our purposes may have been totally different when we were younger than we are now in this stage of our lives.
Yeah.
I want to talk about how we can use your tools to help us know what our purpose is. And then if we don't know what our purpose is, how do we manifest?
Okay. Can you put a pin in that question for a second? And I'll talk to you about purpose first, because it was one of the tools or the tracks that was running along when I was telling you that story about leaving one career and going to another.
Yeah.
It was sort of running along a separate track that I was diving deeper into my own awareness of what had meaning for me, meaning and fulfillment. I don't know if you're familiar with the Ikigai, Ikigai. It is the Japanese art of happy life. It has to do with purpose and also things you love doing that are meaningful to you, things that people will purchase because they have meaning for them, things that people need and things that people want, and intersecting with the skills and talents that you have. And that's kind of a basic explanation of that. But I really recommend people looking at that, because when we think about purpose, automatically people think job. Like that's a very common Western way of looking at it. And we also kind of build that out to how do you spend your day? So you could be somebody who isn't in a traditional job, but somebody who does raise children, somebody who takes care of parents, somebody who takes care of whatever, right? So the core of those experiences, though, the core of jobs or how you spend your day really has to do with a mission and purpose on this planet. People are always saying, how do I find my mission? How do I find my purpose? What is that? And there's astrological tools that will help you along with something like the Ikigai. There's like an intersection of a lot of different tools. But in astrology, the tool that is used to find someone's purpose is known as the North Node. The North Node is a mathematical point. It's not a planet. It's not an asteroid. It's nothing like that. It's a mathematical point. Everybody has one. Everybody has a South Node too, which is the exact opposite point on your astrology chart. The North Node is your karmic mission and path in this life. It is the thing that is new to you. It's not, and I think we do get this wrong in Western culture sometimes, where we're kind of like, if you're naturally good at something in school, that's where we drive people. That's where we put people into college and put people. And that's fine because you have those skills. But that's why people fall out of love with it at some point in their life and go, is this all there is? What is my mission? What's my purpose? Those tools and skills that you have are not useless. They can be used in bringing about your purpose in this life. If you do believe in that, if you believe in reincarnation and all of that, you come from a past life where that was the lesson you learned. So most people drive toward that comfort zone. South Node is also comfort zone. North Node is not comfort zone. North Node is pushing you to expand. It's pushing you to take that raw material, the skill set of communication or whatever it is, and push it into some other relevant body of knowledge or some other kind of relevant experience for your meaningful, what is meaningful to you. And so the North Node, when you're looking at that in someone's birth chart, I look at that and I say, there's two kinds of people. The kind of person that goes, hallelujah, oh my gosh, because there's a million different interpretations of what that could mean. Or someone who's like, not doing that. No.
Let me just back up here because I'm fascinated by this. The North Node. Yeah, there's so much information. And I know, you've spent your entire life dealing with this, and we can't really just get all the richness in an hour recording. Yeah, we'll try.
I tried a lot of input.
Yes. Distill it.
So the North Node is something everyone has.
Yes.
And it is determined by the time and place or date, whatever, that you're born.
Yes.
And people can find this how?
There is such a thing as a long form birth certificate. Sometimes the record keeping in a certain state or in a certain location was not as good. Sometime during the 90s, nurses, in what I'm seeing with the people who come to me, I don't have my birth time. A lot of them were born in Florida in the 90s. And I'm like, oh, wow, like there must have been like a thing, like we got too much work to do. We can't be writing down everybody's birth time. But there's ways of reclaiming. It's called reclaiming a birth time. You really do need to reclaim a birth time to get the intricacies of a birth chart. There's a lot of stuff you can figure out because a lot of the planets move very slowly. But the personal planets, the sun, the moon, Mercury, Mars, Venus, move faster. The ascendant North Node moves faster because they're personal to you.
Okay.
And so if you don't have that birth time, and my goodness, I certainly hope you have the birth location, that will show you where you are on the planet at that moment in time. And that's where the constellations are. That's where the sun is. That's where the moon is. And we are all connected in the sense that we are all the same stuff. We're all the same particle information, right?
Yeah.
So it's all the same stuff. And so these energetic bodies have gravity and have pull and are more important in your chart than in my chart in certain instances. So to find out how you're looking, what you need to do is get a birth chart. Cafe Astrology is a good one. These are all places to get free astrology charts.
Awesome.
You can come to my website and get a free astrology chart. It's just a widget that's on there. Yep.
We'll put the link in the show notes. 100%. Great.
If you have those 3 pieces of information, and even if you don't, so what you're looking for, if you don't know your birth time, is you should put in like the sunrise on that day.
So they get their birth date, they put it in, or their birth time, birth date, all of that, put it into the app, whatever, website, and they get their North Node.
Yep.
Wait, how does that get your North Node?
It'll give you everything. It'll give you where all the planets are. It'll say the sun, if you're born in Capricorn, right? If you're born in January, it'll be like sun in Capricorn, moon in Gemini, or whatever, based on that time and that location on the planet. If you are born at exactly the same time in Perth, Australia, as you are in Vancouver, Canada, it will look different because of where you are on the physical planet. It's not going to be the exact same chart.
Okay, so say we have our north node. What are the options? A, B, or C? So how do you interpret this stuff?
Okay. Well, it will tell you where everybody has a sun, a moon, a rising sign, a Venus, a Mars, a Mercury, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus. All of those things, it will tell you where they fall in terms of a sign and where they fall in terms of a house. A sign is the energetic expression of that planet. So someone who has a Mars in Gemini is going to be talkative, but somebody who has a Mars, which is action, right? Mars is action, who has Mars in Cancer, may be someone who is more nurturing or someone who doesn't communicate feelings. So it's the expression of it, right?
Okay, so wait, because I'm confused.
Oh, dear.
I am obsessing over this north node because you said that's where you find your purpose.
Right.
Yes.
And so
yes.
Within this birth chart, it's got all this information, and it also tells you what your north node is, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
so when we look at that north node, it might say what?
It'll say north node in, I'll just use my own because I know my own.
Yeah.
North node in Gemini, 4 degrees Gemini in the 8th house. I'll tell you.
It gives you all this little information, and then you're like, okay, 4 degrees Gemini means this.
Yes.
What does that mean, just for our listeners?
Yeah, that's where I'm confused as how is that going to, you should be a intuitive tarot reader.
No, that's what it's starting to talk about.
Okay.
So Gemini's communicator, messenger, communicator. Your north node is mission and purpose. We know that, right? It's mission and purpose. It may be something that is a little bit foreign to you or a little bit new. The 8th house, all the houses, I think people don't pay attention to the houses. The houses are the parts of your life that are impacted. So the 8th house is tarot and astrology. The 8th house is also secrets. It's stuff that goes on behind the scenes that we don't talk about in polite society. It is death, taxes, transformation. It is other people's money. It is in-laws. It is all the stuff. We don't talk about that. It makes people uncomfortable. So I am a messenger of the uncomfortable.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So that's what tarot and astrology, because tarot and astrology and mediumship and other things, it's connecting to the divine in a way that is bringing through information to me, because that is my north node. So I had to embrace that. Okay, wow. So I'm looking for a tool. I'm looking for something that I can work with. And there was tarot and astrology there. I understood Gemini and I understood the 8th house. I'm like, am I a messenger of death? Is that what I'm talking about? Is that what's happening? You could have. Anything in that house would be activated by that Gemini north node. The 4 degrees is relevant when other planets come transiting across and activate it. When other planets are moving, your birth chart is stationary, right? Your birth chart is stationary. That 4 degrees is 4 degrees. And when a planet is transiting, it's going to activate it. So if Saturn sits on top of that north node, I got a challenge that I have to face.
I'm bringing it back to finding your purpose. You see all of these things in your north node and you're like, okay, I've got communication, I've got tarot and astrology, and you had this spiritual awakening. So it was really like a baseball bat hitting you across the head. Come on, wake up. It's time. Yeah. But for those of us who don't get those baseball bat moments or hear voices or clearly hear something, that's happened to me exactly once. And all it was flow. That was it. And that can
last you a good long time.
It was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I have wanted to get it again. And it didn't happen. That's all right.
Your logical mind is probably too strong.
God, that would seem so not true. But logic is not something that anybody would ever say about me.
Fair enough.
I think I've got the whole purpose thing. You really need to look at this and then potentially explore other meaning. And
Yes.
so what if you're a novice? I'm sure
Right.
you help people work with this information.
I do. And we do a lot of North Node classes and workshops and stuff. Every once in a while, I'll do a series on each of the signs North Node to get some kind of information. But my experience has been that most people have challenges with astrology because it's not 2 pieces of information, it's 3 pieces of information that they're trying to integrate together. So it's like the juggling of 3 balls as opposed to the juggling of 2, which is fairly straightforward. But then when you start doing 3, it's like, how do these 3 things integrate? And a lot of people completely just cash out on one of them and they focus just on the 2 because their minds are very linear in terms of this means this and this means that. And that third thing over there, I can't deal with it. So that's really one of the things that we like to do. I like to do is I like to have the classes where I teach them about each of the signs, each of the houses and the planets, and especially the North Node and how that works in your life. And I kind of brainstorm it with people. And I'm like, have you ever been, I'm just going to continue to use Gemini, North Node in the 8th house because it's mine. But have you ever felt called to be more of a communicator of something that is a little more spiritual? Because if someone would say to me, oh, you know what, you should be a spokesperson for a tax attorney, because that's also in the 8th house.
Communicator. Yeah.
I would have just been like,
No.
not even no. Hell no. Intuition is remembering. It's just resonance with what your soul already knows. 95% of all the decisions you make are subconscious. And intuition is bringing that stuff up to the surface. Every single part of your life is your intuition in action. Every single part.
So you're following whatever's inside just naturally without you
And
really
you just don't know
thinking of
why.
it.
You just
Yeah.
don't know why. But you're plugging into what's going on. You know what I
Yes.
mean? So you're
Yeah.
plugging in. So what we're doing here is we're trying to brainstorm ideas.
Okay.
There are literally enough ideas within each house, sign, North Node combination that you could go from pillar to post. There could be somebody who also has that direction in their life. They're being asked to go in that direction and they have to just land on it and trust themselves enough that this is the thing that I feel, oh, I'm curious about this.
That's where that intuition, where you feel this connectedness. So if we looked at Melissa's chart, if we knew what it was, her North Node might have something to do with visual expression, nature, something along those lines.
Right. Probably 4th or 5th house, which 5th house is very creative. It's the Kurt Cobain of houses. It's like art for art's sake. Art matters. It's important to me. I don't care if I'm doing it in a closet. I don't need to be paid to do this. I love to do this. That's 5th house. 11th house is, who is going to give me an award for this?
Oh God,
Creativity.
I must be in 11th house.
So there's this, the thing that happens though with North Node is, like I said, there's a lot of people who are seeking their purpose, but a lot of those placements are challenging to those people because it's causing them to stretch. It's not about comfort zone. It's absolutely not about comfort zone.
Got it.
South Node is the comfort zone. So what happens is the problem happens in the South Node.
Okay.
So 8th house and 2nd house are paired.
Okay.
All right. They're across the hall from each other. So if we're using mine, I'll just keep using mine. The 2nd house is where the problem happens. That's the house of making money. That's the house of having an ability to create stability for yourself. In order to create stability for yourself, you must take a risk. 8th house. You must take a risk. If you never leave your parents' house, you may think that's super stable, but when you're 45, that is the most unstable choice you could have made. So, you know, the 8th house, 2nd house is very important because it always requires us to make a risk. And that is true of North Node and South Node too. It always requires us to take some kind of risk.
So are you an advocate of going for your North Node because that's your purpose? Or can you kind of live with this, what your South Node is to make your money and do your North Node? I'm just thinking because I have my oldest child is in the business world is one of those things where always very drawn and was very good at technology and computer science and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's in the business world and that's his job. At this newfound love of art and always doing art on the side. And I'm like,
good.
It's a very steady, wonderful job as a parent. Should I be
such a Capricorn?
telling him to
my
go?
God. All right. So here's the thing about this.
Yes.
That the problem shows up in the South Node. It's going to happen.
It's going to happen sometime. I'm thinking that might someday will just happen on its own, no matter.
Usually people will have a crisis in their South Node. It doesn't always have to be about jobs either. 4th house and 10th house are about home and family versus getting out into the business world. The mother, I mean, I know kind of traditional, but mother versus father kind of thing. But like, if people, the problem only comes when someone is too rigid to not expand. So if they hold on to that South Node like it's you read about and they refuse to do anything, that's when the problem comes. That's when you have catastrophic loss of life. Like all your stuff implodes and oh my God, and why is this happening? All of a sudden your wife is asking for a divorce and oh my God, like why is this going on? That's what's called a tower moment. Something that is built on a foundation. It can be built and it's good. It's working. It's helpful. It's all of those things until it becomes too rigid to allow for growth. And then if it doesn't allow for growth, there's going to be a problem.
So it really seems to me like all of this, the astrology, we haven't even talked or touched on the tarot yet, except for you said tower, but
hey.
But it seems to me like this is all just a way to help people guide themselves or to help guide people into making decisions. And then by using intuition as well, like listening to themselves, they're either going to align with something and be excited by something or say, yeah, that tax thing, not for me. And a way to know yourself in a deeper way. Does that
100%.
make sense?
This is all about learning about yourself. That's all this is about, understanding. And so back to your oldest child, like that technology piece is super creative over the next 30 years. That is going to be an expansive place to be. And only if he says, nope, I got my Mac from 1985 and that's all I'm ever going to use. That's the holding on.
That's keeping it rigid. Yeah.
Correct. It's kind of just like, okay, what's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? That's the way of expansion. That's the way of growth. That's always been the way. There's zero chance that you're going to look at that North Node and go, there's nothing here that I even care about. If people say that to me, I usually think that it's more about fear than it is about literally like opening up to something new or anything like that. And usually it's like after we talk for a little while, I'm like, well, I can see little glimmers of this. I can see in what you're saying, but you're thinking you have to like go from being like you're running a doctor's office to being a magician in Vegas overnight. And we're not saying that at all. Those two things are
very different.
The point is to kind of learn yourself.
You said you do some classes on this. Can someone hire you privately to help them figure this out? Or
I have a coaching group but it's really focused on the people who want to build their YouTube channels and things like that and build a spiritual business or build something that is on this North Node kind of lifetime that they're on. But in terms of doing the North Node, I've been teaching North Node classes now for about 4 years. You know, in the new year, we're going to be doing some more live North Node classes and give them the content to all the learning of their own thing and all of that. And the sessions are live Q&A. They only want to know about theirs. They want to understand how this works for them. Right. And so the sessions are just the live question and answer. They're North Node.
We were talking earlier, you have a huge array of classes, all sorts of courses, things like that you offer. Everything can be found on your website or on your YouTube channel, I think, as well.
Correct. The website houses we have Teachable, we have everything like that plugged into our website. So you can go there and look for astrology courses. I do teach a tarot class. And I'm actually in January starting up a tarot certification.
Oh,
We have
fun.
people who've learned tarot from me, and then we do a program where we go to the next level about tarot, and then they're on my website, and you can go and get a private reading, because I haven't been able to shake free to do a private reading in quite some time. I was tired of just saying I don't do that. I wanted people to have that benefit. So you can come and book a private reading if you like.
Beautiful. People can find you. YouTube for sure. Your channel is
It's called Soulful Revolution, and you'll see my face. So it's very recognizable. And the website is soulfulrevolutiontv.com.
Yep.
And everything is on there. All of our memberships, all of our classes, and everything is on there.
This was so wonderful. And thank you so much for all the time and putting up with all of our questions.
Yeah, this was a long one.
This really was a long one. And because it was so long, we decided we were going to split it up into 2 parts. So next week, we will be back with part 2, talking with MJ about twin flame soul connections and tarot. As always, you can find us on Instagram at Mixing Up Midlife. Find us on our website, mixingupmidlife.com, and you'll see this on YouTube. We thank you again, MJ.
Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. It was really fun to talk to you.
See you next week. Bye.